Welcome back to the second half of the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC on ESPN 50, Sandhagen versus Font. For those of you who have already watched the first half where we covered the 5 prelims, thank you for your patience. We don't intend to do this regularly going forward, but sometimes life intervenes. We do what we got to. We have a 6-fight main card to dig right into. You know Keith. I'm Ben. We're looking at Ignacio Bahamondes versus Ludovit Klein in the first fight. Bahamondes, the 25-year-old Chilean, is 14-4 overall. He's 3-1 since joining the UFC out of the 4th season of Dana White's Contender Series. He lost his first fight right out of the gate to John McDessie. Since then, he has racked up 3 straight wins over Roosevelt Roberts, Rong Zhu, and Trey Ogden. That's the good news for Bahamondes. The bad news is that in those 4 fights, he's only actually fought at lightweight once. He's blown weight twice in 4 fights. He fought at a scheduled 160-pound catch weight against Ogden. So I don't know where Ignacio Bahamondes falls in the lightweight order in the UFC, but I know he's the UFC's best 160-pound fighter right now. He's going to look to get back on track and back to what he believes to be his right weight class against Klein. 28-year-old Slovakian fighter is 19-4-1 overall. He's 3-2-1 in the UFC. He's coming into this fight on a 3-fight unbeaten streak, including wins over Devontae Smith and Mason Jones, and a draw against Jai Herbert in his most recent appearance. That was at UFC 286 in England in March. Odds here heavily favor the young Chilean. He is -200, Klein +170. Keith, I'm going to toss this one to you for your pick first, but win or lose, however you feel about this fight, is it worth it even getting excited about Ignacio Bahamondes as a lightweight contender? or are we just, but I mean, jokes aside, are we just waiting for him to realize that he's a welterweight?
Yeah, he's on that O'Day Osborne diet.
Exactly. And by that, Keith means he ate O'Day Osborne.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you look at the killers at welterweight, I understand why he's trying to make lightweight, but then you look at the killers at lightweight, it's like, dude, you better cut down to add weight if you know. Give me the odds one more time.
Bahamondes is -200, Klein +170.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to like normally I end my prediction, and I won't give who I think is gonna win, but that line is crazy. This should be a pick'em or close to a pick'em. Like that, Klein is a lot better than the Vegas odds suggesting. I mean, he's very athletic. He's a southpaw, technically sound striker, good footwork, quick hands. I love that he sets up his shots with feints really well. Beautiful jab. His fade back left hand is beautiful. Has some nice pop on his hands. And that's because we talked about this about in the past. He always has good foot placement. Like he's really steps in his shots. I mean, he dropped Mason Jones with a beautiful shot. Good kicking game. I love that he kicks to all parts of the body, calf kicks, has a great high kick. His ground game is a little shaky. I mean, he was taken down by Mike Trezano a lot. But he also got a few takedowns himself. But he showed against Devontae Smith and Mason Jones much better takedown defense. Now, Bahamondes, yeah, I agree. I mean, if you're not making weight, it just looks terrible. Like, just move up already. I mean, what I get, like, one strike, okay, but, like, second time, it's unacceptable. He's a good athlete. Like, he's a great athlete. He's long and lengthy, pretty technically sound striker. Really weird that he lost to John McDessie like that. Like that just and I remember that fight. It wasn't even that close.
No,
it was
McDessie handled him.
Yeah, which is such a surprising like that. Now, but I mean, UFC debut things guys can act a little different. But back to Bahamondes, but technically sound striker, good output, presses the action. He doesn't mind a brawl, though it would benefit him to keep it in range. That's where he's best. He can fight out of both stances. He likes to grab his opponent's hand and hand fight to help find range, which I really like. It's something that I think works pretty well if you know how to do it. He can overthrow his shots and can kind of wing his overhands. But what I really do like is he has a lot of variety. Like he throws a lot of different combos. Body shots is a big, strong part of his game. He's got nice power. He doesn't like being pressed back on his back foot, which is the best way to beat him. Like make it into a brawl, force him back. But when you come in, he looks for step in knees. He loves inside leg kicks, going to like the inner thigh. A weak offensive wrestler, but he has like solid takedown defense. If he's taken down, he's strong on the ground. Going back to like the Rongju fight, he swept Rongju when he was taken down. If taken down, he tosses up a lot of subs. He uses those long legs, triangles, arm bars. He loves head attacks like guillotines, Darce chokes. Use those long arms in those positions. He finished Rongju with a Darce choke, and I've seen him on the regional scene be able to go 5 rounds. This is a good fight, and I'd like both guys. Even though I did just bash Bahamondes for not making weight, but I mean, talent-wise, like eyeball test, I like both these guys. Klein is a more technically sound striker, but Bahamondes probably has a better God-given tools. I love the matchup. I like both guys. I'm going to go with Bahamondes because of his length, but I have zero confidence in that pick. So if you're a bettor and you like to play the dogs and you want to play the odds, I like a bet on Klein there. I'm kind of hedging my bets here, but I give me Bahamondes by decision.
Yeah, plenty of questions about both of these guys, and it's worth noting about Klein that he's in sort of the same boat as Bahamondes, just in a whole weight class down. Because when he first got to the UFC, he was still trying to make featherweight on a regular basis. Realized it wasn't for him and has moved up to lightweight. It's not as obvious as with Bahamondes because Klein is more of the short, compact, just really muscular mold, where Bahamondes, you look at him and he's tall and broad. But since Klein has been up at 155, he's fought good-sized lightweights. I mean, he's fought Devontae Smith, Mason Jones, and Jai Herbert. Those are all big dudes for the weight class. And he's been all right, even though he's been the shorter guy. I mean, win or lose, Bahamondes could do worse than look at Klein and realize, you know what, I could move up to 170. I'm still going to be bigger than a lot of these dudes. And if I'm not, I'm faster, I'm more athletic, and I'm improving technically. Like, I just hope he makes the right decision for him, because if you've missed weight twice in 4 fights, then even when you make weight, I wonder if you're at your best. Is your chin as good as it could be? Is your gas tank as good as it's going to be? Is your preparation as good as it should be if you spent the last 6 weeks of camp already doing a pre-cut to get down from 200 pounds to something that, you can easily cut to 155? I don't know those things about him. I agree with you on your assessment of Bahamondes' tools. Like, a lot of them seem to run off of just him being as strong and athletic as he is. I like the diversity of his striking game, like you mentioned. I think a lot of that is probably down to him having been at Valley Flow striking for the last couple of years, because when he first got to the UFC through the Contender Series, he was, I believe he was still training in Chile. But for the last several fights, he's been at Valley Flow striking with Yair Rodriguez. And there's a little bit of the Rodriguez to him, where he's not afraid to go to the body. He throws a great diversity of strikes. He seems to know how to use his size and speed well. I mean, he doesn't have quite the blinding athleticism or smoothness of Yair, obviously. You can argue that nobody in the UFC does, but very much the same kind of ballpark. And I think he's taken inspiration from that. Here, I hate to chicken out, because generally speaking, I think it's overrated to make decisions about a fighter or change your mind on a fight based on how somebody looked at the weigh-ins or how somebody looked during fight week. But if Bahamondes blows weight or he makes weight and he's like shaking and got the shower curtain up around him, I'm gonna feel different about this fight. And I'm with you, Keith. I already feel like there's good upset potential here with Klein, but it gets even more so if Bahamondes looks like shit on a stick on Friday, and Klein's like, having a laugh with his team on the scale. I am cautiously leaning Bahamondes by decision here, but I think it's one where he could find any number of challenges. He could find himself gassed out late and having to hold on. He could just find himself actually kind of struggling to keep up with the smaller Klein, who is very fast and likes to bounce in and out of range. But all things considered, yeah, I'm going with Bahamondes by decision here as well, but should be an interesting one, and should be interesting to talk about what's next for both of these guys afterwards.
The buffet sticks for Bahamondes. Taco Tuesdays.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, it'd be one thing if he looked fat, but the guy is just absolutely ripped.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. It's pretty ironic for me to call someone fat. I go on diet every Monday. By like Monday afternoon, I'm like, I feel like Jesus in the wilderness for 40 days.
Turn these stones into bread. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Can I turn them into pizzas? Like,
yeah. I don't want to. If I haven't eaten 40, I don't want to freaking bread. Bread sticks. Cheesy bread.
next up on the UFC Nashville main card is a 205-pound matchup between Tanner Boser and Aleksa Camur. Boser, the 31-year-old Canadian, is 20-10-1 overall. He is 4-5 in the UFC. He's 0-1 since dropping to light heavyweight. He made his debut to very modest expectations, surprised a few people by kind of fighting against type and showing up as a pretty quick, mobile, and technical heavyweight, but he seems to have come up against a wall against better guys in that division. So he's dropped to light heavyweight. He made his debut in April and got thumped by Ivan Kudalaba. Here he's hoping second time is the charm, and welcoming him to his second try will be Camur. 27-year-old Bosnian American by way of Cleveland is 6-2 overall. He is 1-2 since joining the UFC out of season 3 of Dana White's Contender Series. He debuted back in 2020, winning against Justin Ledet. Since then, he has back-to-back losses to William Knight and Nick Negamariano. The last of those, the Negamariano fight, was just a little over 2 years ago. He's been out for 2 solid years. He has been forced out of at least one fight with injury. So it's been a long road back for the guy who came to the UFC fairly heralded, well, because of his youth, I think his athletic upside, and then obviously the team and sort of geographic association with former UFC heavyweight champ Stipe Miocic. Nonetheless, coming back here, Camur is not favored to win. Boser is minus 180, Camur plus 150. Keith, I mean, Tanner Boser I feel like he's worn a lot of different identities since he's been in the UFC. He's been a funny curiosity. He's been a kind of a dark horse, like hot prospect. He's very much in danger of becoming just another guy if he hasn't already. And if he loses here, it'll be 5 of his last 6. He may just even get a pink slip. Camur feels more like a mystery, but when you look at everything he's done, and again, he's been gone for 2 years, so his wins and losses have both had a chance to kind of sit and mellow a little bit. On the Contender Series and in his UFC debut, he beat Fabio Cherant and Justin Ledet, which is about as low. Yeah. I mean, those are 2 guys that they might have one UFC win between them in like 7 tries. And his losses are to William Knight and Nick Negamariano, and those haven't aged particularly well either. I mean, is this about as low level of matchup as you can make in the UFC light heavyweight division right now?
Ben, I love that you're super funny sometimes without even trying to be funny. Like, just talking. I don't know why I thought it was so funny when you said, like, his wins and losses. Just you've been out for 2 years. Just sit there and like simmer for a while. It's like, well, especially his wins because it's been even longer. Like,
I mean, dude, his record is like you go to a public bathroom and you see a turd like still floating in the toilet. It's like, man, how long you been there, man?
Oh man. I didn't want to talk about this fight so bad that I made up crimes in my city so I could end the last card, and Ben demanded the people hear what I have to say about this fight. Didn't let me weasel out. He's like, if I have to do it, you got to do it too. Yeah, this fight sucks. First of all, this fight should be the opener on the card. Now listen, that could be a banger. It's heavyweights. It could be a knockout. But I'm saying on paper, this is the worst fight of the card. It should be the first fight of the night. It's really disrespectful to some really good fights on the prelims that are under this. Tanner Boser, it's tough. It's tough to know what we have at light heavyweight because he got smashed so quick last time that like he's only for once there.
Yeah,
right?
just once. He won Kudala, but that's it.
Yeah, and he got smashed quickly. So it's hard to really grasp, like, does he look better at light heavyweight? At heavyweight, he used to move pretty well, pretty athletic, but for a heavyweight. Now, I think right away he loses that down at light heavyweight. He's a bit of a point fighter. Like, he's not a big power puncher, and I don't think sucking down a weight's going to help him, as he lacks one punch power. He's more likely to win by a decision. He can be low output at times. I like his jab. I like his kicking game. Like, he's got good kicks. He's not much of an offensive wrestler. He's a weak defensive wrestler. Doesn't have much of a get-up game. He's been knocked out lately, and I don't think sucking water weight out of you is going to be good for your chin too. Aleksa Camur, he's been out for 2 years. Didn't even notice he wasn't here. He's small for the weight class. I have no read on him at all. I mean, he was usually pretty aggressive. We saw that against Nickal and Mariano. He's a pretty decent height output. Though against William Knight, he looked absolutely terrible and had no output and let that William Knight outpoint him. He's got a stinging jab. I like that he rips the body. He has a bob and weave style. He does throw hard, sits on his punches. I'd say he's got decent pop. He throws a lot of kicks. He loves the switch kick and the question mark kick, but he doesn't check kicks. He will look for takedowns, though I wouldn't call him a wrestler. I'd say he's actually a weak defensive wrestler. I mean, Nikolai Negamorane took him down. But he wins on the top, a good ground and pound. Both guys are bad. I have zero interest in this fight. I don't know how you're going to have any confidence in either guy. Camur likely has the better output. He's the one more likely to get a takedown. He's the younger one. But in fairness, like the fairness to Boser, this is a step down in competition for him. You know what? So when we finished the prelims, I had to leave, and originally I said, Ben, just here's my picks. You can read them, whatever you want to do. Yesterday, I took Tanner Boser, and just talking about him, I'm like, there's no upside to Tanner Boser. The upside of Camur is he's young. Steven Miocic is probably back in camp, that he's fighting in November. Hopefully he's, training with him. You know what? Fuck it. I'll go with Camur. That's not who I was originally picking, but I'll take Camur with zero confidence. Give me Camur. It's more fun to pick an upset in a fight like this. So give me the upset.
You're thinking it goes to decision?
Yeah, of course. No, we're not like that. Of course it goes to decision.
Yeah. I mean, you already touched on a lot of points that I wanted to. And in preparing to talk about this fight, I actually went back to some of our earlier shows where we previewed Boser fights because I wanted to remind myself, okay, why were we or why was I?
Yeah.
I mean, what it really boiled down to is after I think after the Felipe Lins fight, I think might have been the first one of his fights that we actually previewed. Like the next one after that was Rafael Pessoa. And after his first couple fights in the UFC, like Daniel Spitz, then Cyril Gane and Felipe Lins, what Boser had going for him was he was a pudgy heavyweight who was slimming down. Like he'd gone from 250 to 240 to 238. And even at 240 or 250, he was one of the few heavyweights that was still bouncing on his toes in the second round, because he had enough athleticism and enough of a gas tank that he wasn't just a statue after the first 4 minutes of the fight. He had a little bit of lateral movement to him, and he's willing to throw leg kicks and jabs. That's literally everything I was excited about. But at a time where the rest of the guys Gane and Chris Dawkins and none of them had really developed into what they were yet, he was about as interesting as any of them. But that's still what he is. And against Kudalaba, we realized that, okay, at 205, being able to move and throw a jab, isn't it's not a point of precious distinction like it is at heavyweight. Yeah. He's just and he's not even a very big light heavyweight. He's just kind of an average dude. And Kudalaba smashed him because, Kudalaba is a guy with incredible offensive tools who just makes really bad choices sometimes and can gas out. And if
Yeah, but you know what? What he makes bad choices, but he didn't go back. He didn't decide to go back and listen to our breakdowns of Felipe Lenz and Tanner Boser. So I don't know if I'd be calling anybody having bad choices there, Ben.
Does it redeem it at all if I was listening at 1.5 speed?
Okay, there you go.
I had to do kind of the same thing about Aleksa Camur, because I remember being mildly high on him, or at least to the point where I noticed when he started losing. But you're right. He's kind of small for the division, and it was deceptive just because he's built like you expect a really good fighter to be built. He's just kind of like this jacked, athletic-looking young guy with like a V-taper and stuff. He looks like a mixed martial artist from a movie, but he looks like a middleweight mixed martial artist from a movie. And yeah, he's a pretty good athlete. He's a hard puncher, and that was enough to carry him to the Contender Series. And through no fault of his own, he probably hit all these milestones a little quicker than a fighter from another camp would have, just because, again, he was a training partner of the champ. He's got that same, Balkan immigrant thing, where Stipe's from Croatia, Camur's from Bosnia, that up until the 80s were the same country. But he wasn't ready for prime time. And then it's always the tough thing when a prospect gets brought along too quickly. Sometimes they manage to develop under the bright lights, and sometimes they don't get a chance to, just because the competition's all too good. Fights are coming one right after another. If you're at Strong Style Fight Team, half your time you're probably helping Stipe prepare for his next fight as much as you are for yours. He just hasn't really developed at all.
Or fighting fires.
Or fighting fires. I mean, it's one or the other. But just nothing Camur has done, even at this point, leads me to believe he's necessarily a UFC material right now. Like, you look back at the Negumereanu fight, and he still looks like a good regional light heavyweight who might be a little small for the division and needs a couple more fights before he's even ready for the Contender Series. And at age 27, that may actually be what he is. I could see him upsetting Boser, because I have no confidence in Boser either, but I'm going to go chalk here and say that Boser just kind of what people like Arlovsky and Gane did to him, he does to Camur, where just he has a little longer reach. He's willing to throw that jab, and he just kind of freezes Camur for most of the fight. I think Boser probably wins a decision here in a fight that is just as dreadful as we fear. I'm thinking we just get 3 rounds of kind of slow-paced, hesitant kickboxing where Camur is slow to pull the trigger, and so is Boser, but Boser's fine with it. Boser by decision. Yeah. Next up on the main card from Nashville this Saturday is a featherweight matchup between Diego Lopes and Gavin Tucker. Lopes, the 28-year-old Brazilian by way of Mexico, at least he trains in Mexico, is 21-6 overall. He is 0-1 since joining the UFC as a veteran of the 5th season of Dana White's Contender Series. He fought there, lost to Joe Anderson Brito, got called up and made a short notice debut in May against Movsar Evloev, of all people. And while he didn't shock the world by getting his hand raised, he at least surprised the world by actually putting it on the super prospect for quite a bit of their fight, even though he ended up losing the decision. He's going to come in on a full camp and look to get his first UFC win here against Tucker. 37-year-old Canadian is 13-2 overall. He is 4-2 since joining the UFC. He has not fought in almost 2.5 years. His last appearance was all the way back in March of 2021. He stepped up on short notice, faced Dan Ige, got knocked out cold in just 22 seconds. Since then, he's been booked several times. He was booked 2 different times to face Pat Sabatini, and Tucker was the one who withdrew both times. Then he had just a longer layoff where he was not booked for anything at all. Here, 2.5 years later, he is finally back, and he is not favored to beat Lopes. Lopes minus 130, Tucker plus 110. Keith, Gavin Tucker's been gone for a long time. No real reason was given for why he withdrew twice from those fights. I assume it's because they were still looking for his face after Dan Ige knocked it off. But I remember being pleasantly surprised by Lopes when he took on Evloev. I thought, okay,
he looked great.
Short notice guy who lost on the Contender Series against Movsar Evloev. This guy is toast. But instead, Lopes arguably won the first round. And while I thought he lost the last round, Ivloev was the one who was in trouble as the
Sure.
horn sounded. I mean, by the eyeball test, he at least belongs here. Does he get it done against Tucker?
Yeah, he could actually got a decision in that. Like I scored it for Evloev, but if like someone like he put Evloev in trouble more than vice versa, you know. Yeah, I mean he took. You mentioned he took Evloev's a stud. Takes it on days' notice on a pay-per-view main event in his UFC debut and gave him everything he can handle. I mean, he's a big featherweight. That's one thing. I mean, Evloev's a small featherweight, anyways, but he's a big guy for the weight class. He's a good boxer, a pocket boxer, tight boxing inside. Nice right hand, nice left hook. Really steps into his shots. I mean, he hurt Evloev early in their fight, almost starched him in like the first minute of the fight. I love that he was working the body. He's got some nice calf kicks. One issue, he's a little stiff in his movement. He lacks head movement, kind of stands right in front of his opponent. He's not a strong offensive or defensive wrestler, but he is a BJJ black belt, and he competes in some high-level BJJ competitions. He's a sub threat. He's got 11 career subs, transitions from sub to sub so well. I mean, he had Evloev in this like super deep armbar in the first round, ended the fight in a deep knee bar, had a bunch of other submission attempts on him in between those. You know, the one concern though is he wasn't using any opportunity to scramble. He was using it to, play BJ off his back, which is a concern. Now, Gavin Tucker, you said he's 37 years old. That's absolutely crazy to me. He seems like he should be a prospect. The guy's, should be on the senior tour. We haven't seen him in 2 years, and the last time we saw him, he got starched in 22 seconds. So between his age and his, being out, like I have no clue what we're gonna get with this guy. What we've seen in the past, he's a southpaw who moves well, pretty fluid, and with his striking. I like his output. He's got some quick hands. He does really good to close the distance, cuts angles in mid attack, switches stances, which I love. Good straight left, mixes kicks in well, hard kicks to the body and to the legs. I love his step in knees. I am worried about his chin though, because you go back to like the Ricky Glenn fight, he took a lot of damage in the Ricky Glenn fight. Obviously, Dan Ige blasted him as good of a knockout you'll see. He was also even hurt in like against a guy like Justin James, which has not aged well. He will get a takedown, but he isn't a great offensive wrestler. But he's a pretty good scrambler. Like, he's good at keeping his hips moving, past his guard pretty easily, and he is a submission threat. So this is a good fight. Tucker was really good a few years ago, but it's really hard to believe in him after this long layoff. So I'm going to go with the younger fighter. I'm going to say Lopes hurts him on the feet. I think he catches him in submission. I say Lopes does it early, first round submission.
Yeah, I can't really argue much against that. You kind of hit on all the high points I wanted to. One being that Lopes hits hard, and Tucker's chin is a little concerning at this point. Like, even the Ige fight aside, Glenn hurt him bad. Even in his wins, he's been caught and got he's been hurt like pretty obviously by just about everyone he's fought in the UFC. Also, obviously, a 2.5-year layoff that involves at least one pretty serious injury and sees you as a featherweight turn 37. Never a promising sign. I was mildly intrigued by Tucker. Like, he seemed to overperform compared to how I expected based on the level of competition he'd been fighting in Canada. But all that sizzle's gone for me now. He's another one where, kind of like you said about Camur, I was kind of surprised to hear his name when he was booked for this fight. And then I was surprised that it had been over 2 years, just because it's too easy to forget about someone in those fast moving waters, especially when they're coming off a bad loss. Just somewhere in my mind is like, oh, he must have got cut or something, Lopes seems to be a bit of a revelation, and it's a good sign to me, at least, that despite just being 28, the guy has like twice as many career fights as Tucker. He's been busy. He's been coming up through a pretty good progression of competition leading into his UFC run here. I think he's ready for the UFC. I don't know where Tucker stands right now, but I think Lopes is going to have a chance here to show off a bit of what he can do. I have him by a first round finish as well. My guess is that it starts with him hurting Tucker bad on the feet, and from there he falls into the ground, and it's kind of I mean, it's kind of chef's choice at that point. I believe you said submission. I'm going to say he goes ahead and finishes it on the ground with punches. But yeah, Lopes by a pretty quick and one-sided shellacking here in my book as well. Third from the top at UFC on ESPN 50 is a light heavyweight matchup between Dustin Jacoby and Kennedy Nzechukwu. Jacoby, the 35-year-old Illinois native by way of Colorado, is 18-7-1 overall. He had a very undistinguished run in the UFC way back in 2011, 2012, went back to kickboxing for several years, became a Glory kickboxing light heavyweight title challenger. He challenged Aleksa Pereira, your now UFC co-worker. When he came back to the UFC, it was pretty quietly. He came through the Contender Series, but since then, again, he is 6-2-1. That's the good news. The bad news is that those 2 losses are in his last 2 fights. After starting off, on a tear, 6-0-1, he has decision losses to Khalil Roundtree and Azamat Mirzakhanov in his last 2 fights. The most recent of those, the Mirzakhanov fight, was a unanimous decision at the UFC on ESPN Holloway versus Allen card in April. He's going to look to get back on track here and resume his status as a rising contender against Nzechukwu. The 31-year-old Nigerian by way of Dallas is 12-3 overall. He is 6-3 since joining the UFC out of season 2 of Dana White's Contender Series, and he is on a 3-fight win streak. He fought most recently in May at UFC 288, choking Devin Clark all the way to sleep in the second round. Prior to that, he had TKO wins over Iwan Kudalaba and Carl Roberson going back just over a year. So Nzechukwu looking for his 4th win in a row, a win that would propel him possibly from intriguing prospect and constant physical matchup problem to actual title contender in the division. And he is moderately favored to get it done. The big Nigerian is -150, Jacoby +130. Keith, tell me how you feel about this fight. Who you think wins?
Yeah, it's a good fight. It's a big step up in competition. Well, I shouldn't say big step up in competition, but it's a right step up in competition for Nzechukwu, from going from Devin Clark to Dustin Jacoby. He's been a nice little run. Jacoby, yeah, he's a tough out for anybody. He's a little bit on a skid right now, but he's got the talent. So I like this fight, and definitely the winner, especially if it's Nzechukwu, because he's been on a run, should probably get a ranked opponent next. The thing I'll say about Kennedy and Nzechukwu, I'm sorry, I'm butchering his last name. He looks better each fight. Like he looked great against Devin Clark. He's this massive guy. He can strike from distance or inside. He works behind a jab from distance, but he also likes to get inside and use his size and kind of bully his opponents. Really upped his output against Carl Roberson and beat him with the pressure. Start now coming to his power and showing it. I still hate some of the things he does defensively, like he pillars, which I hate. He keeps his chin a little high in the air and pulls it straight back, make him a large target, which he already is a large target because of his frame and everything. But in his defense, he eats punches well and is good at in punches, still taking the ground. He's got strong thudding kicks. I love his teep kicks. Love his step-in knee. It's really great technique for him. I like his clinch game, uses his size to frame and land hard knees. I mean, he bullied a good wrestler in Devin Clark in the clinch, which is very impressive. Hit a fantastic elbow in that fight. He will wrestle, but I definitely wouldn't call him a strong wrestler. But because of his size and strength, he can be good on top. Mean ground and pound. Landed one of the meanest elbows from on top on Carl Roberson that you'll see. He's not a submission threat. He isn't a strong defense wrestler. That's because he doesn't have that background. He can get back up to his feet, has that Derek Lewis thing going for him, and he has pretty good cardio for a guy that, you look at him, you say, okay, whether an onslaught, he's going to gas out, and he doesn't really. Jacoby, good volume striker, definitely a technical kickboxer, obviously from his background, stays really relaxed on his feet. Good footwork, he parries punches well, uses feints to set up shots well. I love that he's always attacking from different angles, cutting angles when attacks. He's got a great jab, clean punches down the pipe as follow-up. Doesn't really waste energy, just touches and unloads when there's an opening. He can have, I've never really thought of him as a big power puncher, but he showed he gets done on Jung. He's going to have some power. I love his calf kicks. It's been a while, but I always go back to that Justin Ledet fight where he just beat Justin Ledet with just calf kicks alone. Off offensive wrestling doesn't exist. He just never really goes for a takedown. Weak defensive wrestler. I mean, go back to Ian Cutelaba fight. I mean, Cutelaba looked like Bo Nickal against him with his takedowns, just taking him down with easy.
Ding, ding, ding.
I'm also worried about his chin, as he kept getting hurt by Murzakanov in his last fight, and that's a fight that you think he was going to be the one that be hurting Murzakanov on the feet, and it was the other way around. And I wrote this note. It says poor fight IQ against Murzakanov. I don't know what that was for, but there's take that for what it's worth. Jacoby might be showing some signs of decline while Nzechukwu is getting better each fight. I think Nzechukwu closes the distance and batters Dustin Jacoby in the clinch. I think he might get a takedown or two and batters him on the ground. Jacoby is super tough, so I think he makes a decision, but I think this might be just another one we're talking about. Nzechukwu get a bigger test his next fight. Give me Nzechukwu by decision.
All right. Before I talked about this fight at all, I'm going to introduce something new to our show, because goodness knows our show, the Shillan and Duffy show, does not have nearly enough in jokes and gimmicks. But for those who can see, this is a goat, and it does make a noise. Well, it makes a noise when it has its batteries in it. I'll have batteries before next time, but it makes a little screaming goat noise. From now on, the first time Bo Nickal is mentioned on any of our shows, like, the goat will come out and make its little scream. Like, that's what we'll do.
It fits right. He is the goat. So
yeah, exactly. It fits. I like the breakdown here, and I like that I was wondering if you were going to mention this, and if you didn't, I was going to make a bigger deal out of it. But it is, I think it is worth asking whether Jacoby's recent woes are due to him actually starting to slow down a little bit, because on the face of it, he seems very similar. Like, he's just looked so shockingly good since he came back to the UFC about 3 years ago. But, running into people like Roundtree and Murzakanov, is it him starting to slow down a little bit? He's 35, and I mean, he's had a pretty full MMA career. He's got going on 30 fights. And on top of that, he took off 5 years for kickboxing. And for those who don't know, kickboxers fight a much busier schedule than MMA fighters. Like, you look at someone, like Jacoby, I haven't looked at his full record, but I bet he has more kickboxing fights than MMA fights, even though he only did it full time for 5 years. And he's been an MMA fighter for like 12. That's just how they are. Like, kickboxers end up with like 100 career fights. That's a lot of tread off the tires. I completely agree that Kennedy Nzechukwu is improving from fight to fight. He seems to have just, like, Fortis MMA is working for him. Like, he clearly just listens to what Safe says. He's making improvements from fight to fight, and he's gotten better at making adjustments in fight. That seemed to be a problem early on, just from the Contender Series on through his first couple of UFC fights. But here, I'm leaning towards Kennedy as well, because if Jacoby beats Kennedy Nzechukwu, I have the feeling I know what it looks like, and we'll know it within the first 2 minutes. If Jacoby comes out, throws 3 leg kicks in the first, like 3 calf kicks in the first 2 minutes, and Kennedy doesn't check him, and all of a sudden he's switching stances, he's reluctant to come in, and his reach advantage just completely evaporates, I'm ready to go take a smoke break, even though I'd have to start smoking to do it, because I know Jacoby's probably about to win this fight 30-27, because that's the kind of adjustment that I don't think Nzechukwu is capable of making between rounds. That's the prime way I would see Jacoby winning this fight. All the other possibilities kind of make me lean towards the younger guy. And yeah, if Jacoby is slowed up at all, there's every possibility that Kennedy Nzechukwu makes this actually look easier than we expect. But yeah, I think he'll be at least on even terms at outside distance. He's getting more and more confidence at infighting and just using his massive frame and his ridiculous strength to bully people that he shouldn't be able to. People like Cutelaba and Clark, who are wrestlers and brutally strong people. Yeah, it's Kennedy time here. Give me Kennedy Nzechukwu by a surprisingly easy decision here, where it's Jacoby who finds fewer and fewer opportunities to be competitive outside of the first round. The co-main event of UFC Nashville is a strawweight matchup between Jessica Andrade and Tatiana Suarez. Andrade, the 31-year-old Brazilian, is 24-11 overall. She is 15-9 in the UFC. She has, of course, competed across 3 different weight classes within the promotion: bantamweight, flyweight, and strawweight. At strawweight, she is 7-4. She is a former champ. At flyweight, she made it as far as challenging for the title. She is on a 2-fight losing streak, her first losing streak in over 3 years. She fought in February, getting choked up by Erin Blanchfield in the headliner of UFC Fight Night 219. That, of course, was at flyweight. She returned to strawweight at UFC 288 in May and got knocked out in less than half a round by rising strawweight contender Yan Xiaonan. So she is back at strawweight for a second fight in a row, looking to get back on track here, looking to reaffirm her status as a contender in any of these weight classes in which she competes. And opposing her in that regard will be Suarez. The 32-year-old Mexican-American is a perfect 9-0 in her mixed martial arts career. She is a perfect 6-0 since joining the UFC out of the 23rd season of The Ultimate Fighter. She is 1-0 this year. She showed up at UFC Fight Night Muniz versus Allen in February, fought at flyweight, and guillotine choked Montana De La Rosa in the second round. That was a successful return to action for her after nearly 4 years away. Suarez, of course, if you've been following this sport for even a couple of years, she is the shadow being cast over that entire division, as she was very much seen as not just a future contender, but a very likely future champ before getting waylaid by a litany of injuries and illnesses, including cancer. In a sense, it is a victory of sorts for her to be back and competing at a high level at all. But I'm sure if you ask Suarez herself, she doesn't see it that way, doesn't believe in moral victories, and still thinks of herself as a future champ. This is her chance to prove it, and she is heavily favored to do so. Suarez is minus 400 here, Andrade plus 300 on the comeback. This, of course, is a late replacement fight. I mean, not super late. It was made like 5 or 6 weeks ago. But Suarez had been scheduled to face Virna Jandiroba here. Jandiroba was forced out, and in comes Andrade. I have the feeling that Suarez would have been at least as big a favorite over Jandiroba, but I'm much more interested in this fight because Virna Jandiroba had a miserable style matchup in Suarez, because Suarez was just a much bigger, much stronger version of the same thing. Jandiroba is a jiu-jitsu expert with pretty good wrestling who really counts on her takedowns and top game to beat other women.
Yeah.
Whereas, and she's kind of small, where Suarez is an elite wrestler whose amateur credentials have carried over to mixed martial arts and is big and a mauler. I thought Jandiroba had miserable sledding against Suarez, where even if Suarez had a bad night at the office, the routes to victory were just so tiny for Jandiroba. In Andrade, even if Andrade is slipping, like even if these losses to Blanchfield and Yan Xiaonan, which are her first losses to people who aren't already championship level. I mean, they both might be in the future, but these are Andrade's first losses in the UFC, the people who aren't already, championship level. Even if Andrade still has in her arsenal things that really no other woman at any weight class does. Andrade might be like the hardest one-punch hitter pound for pound in women's MMA history, and she still delivers that. So,
I mean, it's either her or Cyborg. Or Amanda Nunes. But she's in the conversation. Just to be in the category of those two. It's all you need to know.
It's all you need to know. And so even if Suarez has all these stylistic and physical advantages over her, if Suarez makes a mistake, Andrade can make her pay in a way that Jandiroba never could have. Like, Suarez muffs on a spinning strike against Jandiroba. Maybe she goes down, gets her back taken, and loses the rest of the round trying to survive. She does that against Andrade, so there's every chance that she's staring at the lights. So I like this fight better for that reason. Here, I mean, you and I, we've been doing the show for a couple of years, and I wondered whether we'd ever get the chance to preview a Tatiana Suarez fight. I figured she was gone for good, and she was just going to become one of the great what-if stories in UFC history. But here, she's back. She looked great in her return. I mean, I thought De La Rosa was a good comeback opponent just to kind of take the temperature of where she was. and now she's getting an elite opponent, and at age 32, a chance to prove that she is a title contender now rather than later. This fight has the opportunity to teach us some things about Suarez. One, that she can make 115 and look good, and if it becomes necessary, go the full 3 rounds. That's something I want to see. If she can take a shot from a hard hitter, because even before her injuries and illnesses, most of the people that Suarez fought could barely lay a finger on her. We might get a chance to see like how her chin stands up. So I like this very much as a test for Suarez. For Andrade, same thing. Andrade, despite everything, she's younger than Suarez. You know, she's only 31. She should theoretically be in or near her prime, though. I mean, the amount of beatings she's taken, there might be some tread off the tires prematurely, but Andrade has been vulnerable typically to people who can either take or avoid her punch and take her down. That's definitely Suarez. Andrade has the same limitations she's always had. She's an incredibly hard hitter, but there's not much sophistication to her game. Her nickname, of course, means pile driver, and it's extremely appropriate. I mean, she's about as subtle as a sledgehammer. She still does come from that Vanderlei Silva school of striking where she punches hard, but not much of it is straight. It's big, huge haymakers, often with her head down. You know, like when she comes in, often she's coming in with her head down and exiting with her head up. Just there are relatively few women who can make her pay for it. When she wants to wrestle offensively, she's capable of it just because she's so strong. But you know, defensively, she can be taken down. It was always one of the most remarkable things about her game that despite how jacked she is and how hard she swings on everything, she had the ability to keep up a good work rate for multiple rounds. We don't really know that anymore because the Blanchfield and Yan fights were over pretty quickly. She didn't get a chance to, she didn't really get a chance to throw any kind of volume on the feet for any amount of time. So the last indication we really have is her fight with Lauren Murphy, where she was just dominating the whole time, which makes your gas tank look better than it is. All of these things to me really do point to Suarez. I'm not super comfortable with anyone being a minus 400 favorite over Andrade when she's just always got that like roll of nickels in her pocket. But Suarez, on top of being a great wrestler, is a pretty good fundamental boxer who she's not super tall, but just feels rangy, has good reach. And it always feels to me like she's treated her striking as more than just a means to an end. Like she wants to be a good striker and be able to defend herself. I think she's pretty solid there. Barring Andrade just bouncing into range and like walloping her with one huge haymaker, I think Suarez will be able to avoid the worst of it, probably get Andrade down. I think she's probably going to try to take her down within the first 90 seconds of the fight if she knows what's good for her. And there, Andrade on the ground, early in fights, she has pretty good Derek Lewis ground game where she's just like, okay, I'm done with this and gets up because she's so strong. But that does tend, that can be made to go away later in a fight. She can be worn down there. And I think Suarez is going to do that. Give me Suarez to maybe survive a few scares in the first round, but to start to wear on Andrade by the second round, this should be really going Suarez's way. She takes Andrade down that round, advances position, maybe softens her up with some ground and pound, gets Andrade's back and chokes her out. Give me Tatiana Suarez by second round submission here.
Yeah, talk about the story of Tatiana Suarez. Like, if she wins this fight, I mean, she's right in the mix for a title shot. I'm not saying she's going to get it, but she, maybe one more win and she's fighting for the title. Imagine she wins the title. Like, what an incredible story that'll be.
It would be an all time.
Yeah,
yeah.
Which is, I was making a joke earlier about Sandhagen coming over to the Boston card instead of Font going the other way. Yeah, I was making a joke because I want the more stacked card I want to be at, but still, like, I think there's some truth to it that you stack out the pay-per-view more than the fight night. But also, what a way to get over Tatiana Suarez if she wins a main event instead of a co-main event, against a former champion.
The way things are right now, if Carla Esparza was still the strawweight champ, I would say Suarez would be in absolutely if she won on Saturday. Like if they could sell a Suarez rematch, I think she'd be next. Here
she might be next. She might be next anyways because the Weili Zhang is fighting Amanda Lemos. And then after that, I mean, Rose Namajunas is out of the weight class now. Joanne is retired. I mean, who else is there? I'm sure there's somebody I'm not thinking of, but she's right in the mix. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if she wins. That's a big if, because -4.
Look, I'm not to get too excited, but if she were to win the strawweight title, she also has a win over Aleksa Grasso. Like, Suarez, if she keeps winning, she's got plenty of time to make one hell of a story.
Yeah, we're saying that the biggest she went from the biggest question mark, like, oh my God, what could have been, to she's going to be double champ in no time.
Well, I mean, how shocked would you be?
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah. I'm sorry to continually interrupt you, but I'm getting ahead of myself here.
Yeah, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves because we're saying Aleksa Grasso. There's still Valentina Shevchenko in there. So, that they win the flyweight's tougher than win strawweight right now. And I me how I feel about Weili Zhang. I'm huge on Weili Zhang, and I like Amanda Lemos a lot too. So that wasn't a diss on either one of those. The negative 400 is just disrespectful to someone Jessica Andrade. I understand she lost her last 2 fights, but this is still a big step up from Montana De La Rosa. I had asked what Tatiana Suarez is going to look like coming back down to 115. We talk about her being out. It's been a long time since she fought at 115 too. So, Andrade, she's this high output fighter who marches down her foes, constantly taking the ground. But I am concerned that she might have slowed down a little bit, so that might not be the case. But when she blitzes, she can be, it's a scary thing. Throws those, hard hooks, hits. You mentioned it, like one of the hardest hitter pound for pound in MMA history, female MMA history. And what I've always been most impressed about is she's had the cardio to keep the power throughout the entire fight. 15 minutes shouldn't be an issue for her. Hard calf kicks. She is very hittable, though, because she keeps her hands low and just marches forward. She tended to struggle a little bit with the speed of Erin Blanchfield. She also took that fight that week, so. But I'm starting to be worried about her chin. I mean, it's back-to-back fights, and she's gotten smoked. She's taken a lot of damage over the years. Due to her heavy boxing base, she's open to calf kicks. She can wrestle. She has fast entries, and she's insanely strong. She grabs a limb, and she's slamming her opponents. Obviously, most famous slamming Rose Namajunas to win the title. Mean ground and pound, though she was subbed in her last fight, so that's something to think about. You said Tatiana Suarez looked great again at Montana. I'm gonna disagree a little bit. I don't think she looked great. I think she looked okay. She needs to go on a run now. That she needs, and it's okay to look okay. One, against Montana De La Rosa, I think she's an underrated fighter, and actually one of the tougher stylistic matchups based on she's a pretty decent wrestler herself. But been out for a while, ring rust, everything. Like, I think it's okay to look just not as good as what she last seen her, but still pretty damn good. Still beats most of the fighters in the UFC. But I'm still concerned with the age, the injuries. What has that done to her body besides, fighting good competition? She's a long and lengthy fighter. She's a southpaw. She marches forward, long rangey strikes. But tends to throw a lot of single strikes. She throws a lot of kicks because she's long, and she's also not worried of getting her leg caught. But she keeps her chin high in there, so that's a huge target for Jessica Andrade. But I can talk about her striking, and I think her striking is a little better than she gets credited. But I mean, her wrestling's off the chart. Great entries, chain wrestles well. She can shoot too far away at times, but she just makes up for having those really long arms. She likes to use her size also to close the distance, to grind in the clinch, and wear on her opponents. If she gets a takedown, great top control. We've seen her do against like Carlos Esparza and Nita Ansaroff, just grabbing like the Dagestani handcuff and just holding him down. Mean ground and pound. She beat the brakes off of Carlos Esparza in that fight. She has a submission threat. She has 5 career subs. Something else to watch about. Even though I said I think it's disrespectful for Jessica Andrade to be a positive 400 or whatever it was, the Tatiana Suarez negative 400. I still think this is a terrible stylistic matchup for Andrade. What I mean by that is Andrade likes being the bully. She likes to bully her opponents, be stronger than them, go after the foe. And if you go across the division, Tatiana Suarez is like the one person you can't bully Tatiana Suarez. You're not gonna be stronger than. I mean, when I say stronger, she might be able to bench press baller, but I mean like positionally, like understanding leverage and getting in the clinch. So I see Suarez standing on the outside, landing some kicks. When Andrade tries to close the distance to land some bombs, that just puts her right in the range of Suarez for her takedowns. I think Suarez lands some takedowns. I think Suarez holds her down, swarms her on the ground. Give me Suarez by decision, and surprisingly easy decision for her.
That brings us to the co-main event of UFC Boston. Oh, sorry. That brings us to the main event of UFC Nashville, a 140-pound catchweight match between bantamweight contenders Cory Sandhagen and Rob Font. Sandhagen, the 31-year-old Colorado native, is 16-4 overall. He is 9-3 in the UFC. He is a former UFC interim bantamweight title challenger. He is on a 2-fight win streak. After back-to-back losses to TJ Dillashaw and Petr Yan a couple years ago, he has rattled off back-to-back wins over Song Yadong and Marlon Vera. He's going to look to make it 3 in a row, confirm himself a continued presence in the bantamweight title picture against Font, who is looking to do pretty much the same thing, honestly. 36-year-old Boston native is 20-6 overall. He is 9-5 in the UFC. He is coming in off of a win as well. He appeared at UFC 287 in April, where he brought the meteoric rise of Adrian Yanez to a screeching halt with a first-round knockout. That allowed Font to get back into the win column after his back-to-back decision losses to Jose Aldo and Marlon Vera over the last couple of years. So Font looking to remind everybody that he's not gone anywhere either. He is the underdog nonetheless. He's out there around plus 225 or plus 230. Sandhagen available around minus 275. Keith, this is a high stakes fight because these two guys are very much in the same place. Where when you've been close to the title or close to the title picture and not quite made it, when you've hit against the ceiling a few times, as both of these guys have, I feel like there's two things that you need to prove at the same time as a fighter. And these guys might not look at it that way, but we as outside observers, I think we can. One, you need to prove that you offer any kind of upside to make it worth matching you against the higher ranked fighters. Like, you have to go on a streak. You have to show some kind of personality and marketability that makes you an attractive B-side for a main event. And then at the same time, you have to prove that there's still a good gulf between you and the up-and-comers, those, 8 through 15 range people. Font and Sandhagen both did that emphatically in their last appearances. Like, Font starching Adrian Yanez, I think, is a win that's going to, it was great in the moment, and I think it's going to age even better going forward because I still very much am a believer in Adrian Yanez. Sandhagen, like, I picked Marlon Vera to beat Cory Sandhagen, even though I knew Sandhagen had the reach advantage, was the more technical striker, probably had the more high level experience, had the more 5-round experience. I thought Vera's aggression and power would be enough, and they were not. Sandhagen, frankly, schooled him, and gave one of my favorite post-fight quotes, afterwards, that it's kind of stuck with me ever since, where he's like, you can't just keep saying I'm going to beat this guy because I'm hungrier, because you're eventually going to run into guys who are just as hungry as you, but are better fighters. I mean, that's words to frame, like, have your wife cross stitch and put them on the wall. Like, I expect to see that on the wall behind you there next time.
Yeah. Is he like Ode Osborne hungry?
Okay. well, they're fighting at 140, so maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
So both these guys in a pretty close to the same spot with kind of the same thing to prove for their own prospects going forward, even more urgently for Font because he never made quite the same heights and he's several years older. Tell me who you think gets it done here. And is this just a fun contenders fight, or is there another run in either of these guys?
I think the winner definitely 100%. When you have Aljamain Sterling versus Sean O'Malley, the next in line, really, it really depends on who wins. If Aljamain Sterling wins, does he fight his teammate Merab? Does he move on? Like, there's a lot of questions about. But if Sean O'Malley wins, Merab's next.
Yeah.
But if Merab or O'Malley get hurt, say O'Malley wins, just for make it simpler because of Sterling's situation, who knows? But O'Malley wins, Merab's gonna step up. He's gonna avenge his teammate, best friend, everything, training partner. They get booked, and suddenly Merab falls out. Who's the next person the UFC's calling?
If this fight's over by then, the winner of this fight is close to the top of that speed dial. I'm with you there.
That's what I'm saying. Especially Sandhagen, because he doesn't have the bad loss. Like he has, like Font has that loss of Jose Aldo. They kind of, kind of stains him a little bit. But if he puts on a performance and beats up Cory Sandhagen, then maybe all things might be forgiven. He might be fighting for the title. So, if I'll say this, actually I don't know if it's possible, but say Rob Font wins and knocks out Cory Sandhagen. Quick, say it's a minute. Doesn't get hurt. Something happens between Sterling and say O'Malley gets hurt. Sterling's not going to fight Merab. Rob Font would make if again, now this is obviously a really crazy turnaround, 3 weeks, something like that, but 3 weeks in Boston, where you're from, like when
I would consider it if I were the UFC. I mean, it would all depend on whether like Henry Cejudo starts to start making noise.
Well, Cejudo's out. Remember, Cejudo got hurt.
That's right. He got the shoulder injury.
He was supposed to be on that card.
Yeah, dude, you're right. Like who's even there that would be coming off any sort of win or two that would make them plausible?
Yeah, I don't know.
I
mean, there's probably somebody. I don't have the rankings right in front of me.
Yeah.
And was it Mike? Mike, who gave me shit for always bringing up the Sherdog rankings and not having it memorized. So I don't have the Sherdog rankings memorized to go down the list and go, oh, this guy makes sense. So shout out to I think it was Mike. Now I feel really bad if I'm shouting out the wrong guy. Anyways, who's gonna win this fight? Cory Sandhagen looks so good in his last fight. Long and lengthy, super fluid, moves really well. Can fight out of both stances, uses feints to set up his shots, just touches in, stays busy. It stays calm, and some of the best variety I've seen in his fight against Marlon Vera, constantly attacking with different combinations, good at cutting angles. He was striking and hitting before Vera could react. He was off on a different angle than he originally attacked. Worked the body. Loved his knees in close. Great kicks from distance. I love his calf kicks. He can strike and wrestle together. He blends them together really well. He's a really we don't think of Cory Sandhagen. I think of Cory Sandhagen. When I think of Cory Sandhagen, I think of long and length, and I think of an athlete. I don't think of. I mean, I look at Frankie Edgar. Like that jumps off the page, athlete. But he's an underrated wrestler. Good at winning scrambles. If he's taken down, he's hard to hold down. I mean, we go back to like the TJ Dillashaw fight. A fight that a lot of people, who knows if he won that fight, where he'd be situated right now. A fight that a lot of people thought he should have won. Rob Font, on the feet, a good striker who fights out of both stances. He's a technical boxer, marches down his foe. He loves his jab. He steps in with his right hand, which is accurate, when he uses by like feinting and stuff. Fast combinations, but he kind of lacks power. Now, that isn't the case, in his last fight against Adrianis, but generally speaking, he's not known for, being a power puncher, more of a win rounds, just being a cleaner boxer. His defense is a high guard, good vision. He understands range well, just moves his head just out of reach to counter. He doesn't over exaggerate on his slips. He kind of keeps himself in range. I love that he works the body. He's a much better wrestler than he gets credited for. I mean, you go down his list of opponents he's fought and who he's taken down. He's taken down Sergio Pettis. He took down, a bunch of times. He took down Ricky Simone, who's, a more decorated wrestler. He took down Cody Garbrandt, who's a more decorated wrestler. He took down Jose Aldo, which is, in a loss was still, anytime you take down Jose Aldo, even the, past prime Jose Aldo was always an accomplishment. And even in the loss against Marlon Vera, he took him down. He's got a little bit of and probably not the best comparison, but He's got a little bit of like Aleksa over one, where he's known for his kickboxing, but he might actually be a better wrestler than he is a boxer. Not I shouldn't say better, but my point is he, like, if he wrestles, like, I wouldn't be surprised. He loves to shoot into the body lock and then slam, like get to the hip and then slam. He's a weak defensive wrestler, which is surprising after I just talked about. He's been taken down a bunch of times. He'll also make the mistake of jumping guillotine, which makes it worse. But he's hard to hold down. He does well to get back to his feet. Decent grappling. He's got 4 submissions. So this is a fun fight. But to me, you know, Rob Font is clean. And when I watch him, there's nothing that like jumps out at me at like, wow, this is the big weakness in him. But there's just, he gets to a level and he just seems like he can't get over it. Like he can't figure out, you know, the Jose Aldo was such a bad loss. Marlon Vera, he struggled. And Sandhagen to me seems like a level above that. And it kind of feels like what I saw with Marlon Vera. Not just that Sandhagen was better than him, but there was levels to them. And you know, it wasn't just a bad stylist matchup. It was more like, no, here's a good fighter. Here's an elite fighter. Here's a guy and I feel like Rob Font is in that. He's good. He's a tough out. You beat Rob Font, you're a contender. But Sandhagen seems like a contender. Sandhagen seems like a guy to me that could win the title one day. If Sandhagen fought, and I know they've already fought Aljamain Sterling, smoked him. But if they fought and Sandhagen beat him, I wouldn't be surprised at all. If Rob Font beat Aljamain Sterling, I'd be surprised. So I think Font might be too, like, he's really tough. We saw that in the beating he took from Marlon Vera and everything. I think Cory Sandhagen picks up his time, and I think he counters the jab with combinations, works the body, knees inside, quicker, longer. I think he batters Rob Font. I think he gets the best of him for a majority of the fight. We start doing that, like, why aren't they throwing the towel? And I actually think he finishes him. I'm going to say he finishes him the 4th round by TKO.
Man, even though you gave like a pretty straightforward pick of you think it's going to be one-way traffic, your whole build there made me more excited for this fight. Because even if you're dead right, I mean, it's a challenge to go out there and do it. Even if you have the stylistic advantage, even if you're in a better place in your career, I mean, Font is a dangerous opponent. Like, and it'll be interesting to see if Sandhagen can thread that needle. It'll be interesting to see if Font can shock us. I do think, like, the general assessment that this is a very good fighter with some elite weapons against an elite fighter is very much the case, because Font is a very good fighter. And when I think of elite weapons, I think for what he wants to do with the jab, he has one of the best jabs in the UFC. He's got the Camur Usman jab, where it is a weapon in itself. He wants it to hurt people. He wants it to change their game plan. It's not just a rangefinder. It's not radar out there. It's like, I'm going to swell your eyes shut. I'm going to give you cuts. I'm going to sit you down if I catch you off balance. And similar to Camur Usman, I always think of Rob Font as taller than he is, because, like, he has long arms, and because of the way he stands when he strikes, he fights like a tall guy using a long jab, when in fact he's like a medium height guy using a long jab. And that's not any sort of criticism. Just, you know, I'm always surprised when he actually gets in the cage that Font is like 5'8" or 5'9" instead of like 5'11", going on 6 feet like Sandhagen is. The problem is that the fighters who've really given Sandhagen trouble are the ones who have a diversity of offensive weapons. Petr Yan, great, fantastic 5-round fight. I definitely thought the right guy won, but it was competitive the whole way along. But, you know, Jan gave Sandhagen a lot of things to worry about. Even if I thought Sandhagen should have beaten Dillashaw has a legendarily diverse offensive arsenal, hard footwork to deal with, always the threat of wrestling, which brings me around to the next point I was going to make, where you suggested that, you know, Font, I mean, if he isn't literally a better wrestler than striker, it is at least kind of like Overeem, a very underrated part of his skill set. I would even go so far as to say that Font is the kind of guy whose striking works better if he's willing to use his wrestling to set it up, or at least the threat of it to give his opponent something to think about. And there are plenty of other fighters like that. If Font is willing to, you know, try and wrestle, throw in a takedown attempt or two. I think that'll help him against Sandhagen, unless he runs right into a flying knee. But, if he actually gets in on Sandhagen's hips, makes him work for a while, maybe takes him down and makes him have to get back up, that will inform how Sandhagen deals with him from there on out. But if Fonta stands in front of Sandhagen and tries to, trade jabs and 1-2s, I think he's just going to get blistered. I'm with you here. Yeah, like Sandhagen, his loss to Sterling, it wasn't a fluke. Sterling's an incredible grappler. Sandhagen was several years less far along in his development. I don't know who I'd favor if they fought this weekend, but I know that like a blitzkrieg submission in 90 seconds, like wouldn't necessarily be my pick. It was the kind of win that doesn't tell you how the rest of a 10-fight series between them would go.
Yeah, agreed.
So, yeah, I mean, the way to beat Cory Sandhagen these days is you kind of need to like scramble his systems by giving him a lot of stuff to worry about. Vera and Song both tried to get to Sandhagen with just a couple of the same weapons. They both were harder hitters than Sandhagen on a shot-for-shot basis and just never really got the chance to show it. Sandhagen outclassed them both. I see Font running into kind of that same problem here. I think it'll be competitive, at least in the early going, and Font is super game, super tough. He's well coached. If he makes it to the first round, I think, he's going to get the chance to make adjustments in between rounds, from Tyson Chartier. But he's got an uphill battle here. I believe you had Sandhagen by KO in the 4th round. That's actually the exact same round I was going to say. I'm not going to be different just for the sake of difference, but give me a competitive fight that turns into a rout as Sandhagen just takes more and more control of the range, the rhythm, starts to find Font's face with his punches, and maybe he even finishes it off with something big, some kind of spin kick or step in knee that ices Font, and it's one for the highlight reel and positions Sandhagen as a potential title contender again sooner rather than later. That is it. The Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC on ESPN 50, Sandhagen versus Font, also known as UFC Nashville. I've been your host, Ben. He has been Keith, your resident expert and analyst. Obviously, we've already been over, this being a 2-part preview. That is not our plan going forward. We just kind of had to because real life intervened, but we appreciate your patience. If this is your first time watching or listening to one of our preview shows, first of all, thank you. We hope you enjoyed it. We do our best to bring a mix of legitimate in-depth analysis, picks, and predictions with all of your most up-to-date Bo Nickal news and the occasional joke or historical aside as well. Please do like, subscribe, drop us a comment. Keith and I love to hear from you. We both man that comment section. But most importantly, join us for the recap. We will be live on the Sherdog YouTube page about 10 to 15 minutes after this main event, where Keith will take the captain's chair. We'll talk about all 11 of these fights in reverse order, from the headliner all the way down to the 140-pound catchweight opener between Ode Osborne and Asu Almalbayev. We'll talk about what was good, what was bad, what was surprising, what was controversial. There's always something. I might have some stories to tell because I'm going to go cover the first round of the PFL playoffs in person in San Antonio this Friday. So if there are any fun backstage stories, I'll be here to tell them. But
how far is it? Sorry to interrupt. How far is the drive from Houston to San Antonio?
Almost exactly 3 hours. Yeah.
Could you go to the Alamo?
I mean, I could, but I don't have enough time. Like the line just to get past the gift shop is like 3 hours long. Like,
really?
I've been to the Alamo. Like it's really fun. It's a cool historic site. It's Texas history. It's American history. It's Mexican history. It's beautifully preserved. But once you've done it a few times, you realize that the gift shop is like literally bigger than the fort. It is a super touristy trap, and it's kind of like people who live in Vegas never go to the Strip. Okay. Like people who live in Texas, once they've been to the Alamo once or twice, that they leave it. If you ever come down here, I'll take you to the Alamo. It's cool.
All right, deal.
All right. Yeah. Anyway, if I have any wild PFL stories to tell, I'll tell them. But most of all, we'll be talking with you because the live chat on our YouTube video is open that whole time. So we're taking your questions, your comments, and your hot takes in real time. We have a growing community of friends who hang out with us after the fights, and we would love for you to be part of it. Between now and then, thank you once again for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week. Got anything else, Keith?
Yeah, I was gonna say you said that our normal plan is not to do 2 episodes per. Do you want to tell them what our actual plan is?
Oh, go for it.
Yeah, okay. I mean, because if they listen to 2 episodes, so our actual plan is to have 1 episode, but to be a pay-per-view. Like you have to pay for it. $75.
Hey, it's great. We just need 2 or 3 suckers, you know? Yeah,
It's obviously, we're joking.
yeah, it's like that.
Like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. So
yeah, like, subscribe, enjoy the rest of your week. Yeah, comment, enjoy the fights, and we'll talk to you on Saturday.